Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Welcome, dear friends, to Kardec Radio at Health and Spirituality. This is our program, a program that we began in 2011 when Kardec Radio was just founded. Dr. Gary Schwartz, our godfather, came here to kickstart it with us. But now, 12 years later, we're in a new season of the program. It's Blessed America, to show to us that in this blessed country, the United States of America, there is much going on that we need to stop, read, discuss, reflect, and incorporate in our lives. Wonderful thinkers are opening new doors for our self-realization. And I'm talking about the word that I recently read in an article by the very author who is going to be here with us in a minute, Joseph Selbie. He's here. He has written books that are unprecedented, like The Physics of God, Break Through the Limits of the Brain, The Yugas. You can go to his website, and I'm going to put it right here for us, so I make no mistake about the website. It's right here. You'll see in a second the website for you. For those who are listening to us only, it's josephselbie.com. If I'm pronouncing well, but he'll tell us in a minute. Joseph, Selbie, Selbie.com. Okay? We have much to talk about. As a neuroscientist myself, I am in love because it's all about spirituality and the brain. I don't want to be simplistic, but there's so much beauty, especially in the book we're going to talk about mostly today. It's about the book that comes from our author. Just to let you know a little more before I bring him in here to talk to us. You can read more about him in the website that you are seeing right here. He does something quite unique, which is the bridge between science and spirituality, spiritual experience, religion, if I may say this way. He wrote 3 books, as I already mentioned to you. And in 1975, he became a founding member of Ananda, which is a spiritual community and movement inspired by the renowned teachings of Yogananda. Yes. His role as teacher and minister in decades of study under Kriyananda, a direct disciple of Yogananda, gave him a deep dive into Eastern philosophy, meditation, and comparative religion. Joseph is also a critical thinker grounded in science, based on his studies of physics, chemistry, microbiology at the University of Colorado, and he is opening new grounds for our new era, bridging up science and spirituality. There's so much for us to discuss, and if you want his books, easy. It's here on the phone. I have it right here with me. I'm going to show it to you. You don't need to go to the bookstore if you don't want to. Just order in your Kindle, and you see the book right there. You open it up, and you have the opportunity of reading it, getting to know more, transforming yourself. So here he is, Joseph Selbie. Thank you so much for being here with us. How have you been?
Great, thank you. It's been a lovely spring where I live, Northern California.
Wonderful. That's great. And I want to ask first and foremost, because it's not trivial, how you go from your impulse, broaden, and let's say in 2 worlds. You are in the world of the spirituality, your experience there, and at the same time, you're experiencing the world of science. what made you first think about bridging them up?
Well, I was raised in a family where science was the last word, if you will. That it was very important to my father, and my rest of my family shared a similar point of view that, science had all the answers in the case of my family, and that anything that we would, discuss or approach to have a persuasive point of view within the family, you had to ground it in science. As I used to joke, dinner table conversations required references, that we needed to, know our stuff in order to make a good, cogent point. And while that was a bit of a stress at times, it really taught me to think clearly and logically. And I went off to my higher education at the University of Colorado, thoroughly expecting to end up with a degree in one of the sciences. I was drawn particularly to microbiology. It was a great program at the time that I was in school. And I still really enjoy having that foundation. But it was also in the middle of my time at the University of Colorado that I had hallucinogenic experiences and also began meditating just about the same time, that opened up to me an entire experiential reality that wasn't just philosophical. There's the old saying, seeing is believing. Well, experiencing is believing, right? That you can't deny to yourself the reality, the validity of profound experience. And that's what I had. I had several of them, one in particular. So you could say the rest of my life, which eventually step by step led me to being here at Ananda, as you mentioned in your lead in, was really about that combination of a clear-minded scientific point of view about the nature of reality, and then the spiritual point of view about the nature of reality. And one way I began to see it is that science approaches a view of reality starting with the physical. And then as you get into the more distant frontiers of physics, that reality becomes less and less connected with matter and more connected with subtle energies, even just pure information, where universal spiritual teachings, which is what Yogananda taught, starts with the subtle and then works its way to the physical. So rather than being at variance, they just sort of have different beginning standpoints, and where they intersect, and they intersect a lot, is for me a delight, because I don't have to, how to put it? I don't have to cram facts into fitting a picture of reality that is presented to me by spirituality. And I don't have to cram spirituality into a picture of reality that is presented by science. There actually is a very rich common ground between the two.
So interesting, because I know you published this latest book last year. And I know it's your lifelong experience, but I was wondering how much of what you brought to life was also influenced by this great worldwide pandemic, the crisis. Did that influence you to write the book?
To some degree it did.
Yeah.
I can't say it was a surpassing influence, but it definitely made me think about what is health? Where does health come from? And to what degree is it about molecules and viruses? And to what degree is it about mental convictions and emotions? So it was certainly a part of that process. But more deeply, because I had already begun to write it before the pandemic, the notion of the need to break through the limits of the brain
Yes.
came from studying neuroscience and beginning to understand, or not beginning, I shouldn't say, but putting together more recent discoveries in neuroscience with what I already understood from physics and my deep dive into spirituality in the teachings of Yogananda. I began to see how the brain is both our best friend and our worst enemy. The brain is our best friend because in order to function in this world that we experience through the senses and interact with daily as human beings with goals and aspirations and relationships, we really have to have the brain set up to process information coming from the senses and to give us control over the body, muscular control, coordination. We have to have a brain to keep all the autonomic functions of the body working so that we're digesting our food and circulation is working. Otherwise, we just simply couldn't function. And many of those activities are coordinated by this amazing organ in our skull that we think of as the brain. But the brain also tends to limit us, not because the brain is inherently limited, but because we use it in a limited fashion.
You change the paradigm. So the mind is not in the brain. The
mind is not in the brain.
Exactly. So that's very important for people to know. The mind is not in the brain, but, and as you said, we don't use it to its potential, right?
Well, our mind not only is not in the brain, it's not even generated by the brain.
Exactly.
We have a mind even before we're born. So we exist as eternal, infinite, superconscious spiritual beings. And then we're born into a body and we need to use that body. And we look around us, we observe other adults and we see what they do. And we mimic them. And we build circuits that allow us to function in the physical body. And these circuits, it's kind of fascinating in a way that even though we would consider ourselves the most advanced creatures on the earth, we come into our bodies with the least pre-programming. That our brains are not preset to do any of the amazing things that other animals typically do right from birth. You know, anybody who watches Discovery or any of the numerous programs about animals and their behavior has seen clips of like a baby gazelle born and then running 5 minutes later.
Exactly.
Where a human baby takes a year, 2 years to be able to walk successfully. And that's because we have more of a clean slate. We don't have these preset circuits just to an amazing degree. We have hidden circuits, what we think of as the automatic nervous system, that make sure our circulation, digestion, respiration, all those other functions work without us having to have any conscious involvement in them. So to that degree, we are pre-programmed. But the simple ability to walk, we have to teach ourselves. And in the process of teaching ourselves, we create new circuits. So think of a circuit as a neuron that is a starting point that then when it fires, it cascades through other neurons. So when you take a single step, you're not really just doing one thing. You're kicking into motion, you're kicking into activity thousands of neurons that send signals to other neurons or directly to muscles, and they do it in a sequential order that results in you stepping forward in synchrony, left leg, right leg. And it's astonishing how complex simple things are that we've learned to do. So we train ourselves, and those circuits occupy more and more of our brain and more of our awareness. We also develop circuits of emotional responses. In a nutshell, what the brain does for us is it creates circuits to support anything we do, whether that's a behavior, an emotion, a train of thought, or recalling a memory. Anything that we do over and over again, the brain, like an obliging servant, will make it easier for us to do that. So that's all the circuit is about walking, is the brain makes it easier for us to do it. But it's so complicated, if we didn't have the brain making it easier for us to do it, it would take us, every day when we wake up, right? We take half the day to remember how to move our hands and arms. So they're vital to us. This is why the brain is our best friend. But the brain also is neutral about what we train it to do. So if we train the brain to have negative emotional responses to things, the brain will obligingly make that easier for us to experience. If we train our brain to have very, to tune in to like a radio, like tuning into a radio station, if we train our brain to tune into thinking that limits us or makes us think of ourselves as unable or unworthy, you name it, that's the way we will think, and that's the way we will respond habitually. And so this is when the brain becomes our worst enemy. If we have a vast body of pre-programmed circuits that have a negative impact on us, then we're stuck in that after a while. And this is why we have to break through the limits of the brain, because we've created those limits unknowingly for the most part. And a large measure of it is in our childhood and early adulthood.
Yes, you're right. And you talk about two bodies. In chapter 5, you say, I love your titles, the titles. I just want to share with the listener, the viewer here. I love when you write the chapters, you say we, the chapter 1, we are so much more than we know. Love it. And then I'm not skipping the steps, but in part 2, chapter 5, you begin by stating in the chapter title, we have two bodies.
Yes. And I think that I know my intention of that was to just get people's attention that we are multi-layered beings, multi-dimensional beings, if you will. That in the book, The Physics of God, I go into it in a great deal of detail. But essentially, when we die, the reason why we live on after death, and this is the promise of all the world's religions, and it's the experience of near-death experiencers, that we have a reality that is beyond the physical body. And when we die, we immediately are made aware of it.
Yes.
We have the same memories, we have the same mental faculties, we have the same ability to feel. We even have what appears to us to be a similar body, but they're all finer. They're all if you will, kind of the best of us, the perfect body, the perfect expression of physicality. And what the spiritual teachings of teachers like Yogananda and others tell us is that the physical body is an expression of that subtle energy body. Yes. The physical body is the physical manifestation of all of the qualities that are in that more subtle energy astral body. Mm-hmm. And that, of course, it's there all the time, therefore. It's not as if we leave that behind and become a physical body for a while. Mm-hmm. We just have two bodies simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And if you get into spiritual teachings on a more esoteric basis, there's a lot of teaching that we have, in fact, more and more subtle bodies. But the two most obvious to us, the two most accessible to us are the physical body and the energy body. Mm-hmm. And so we're always operating with this duality, and the mind exists in the subtle energy body. It doesn't exist in the physical body. Mm. Thoughts originate from this more subtle energy body. Feelings originate from this more subtle body. And so when we experience an emotion or have a thought, even if our attention is primarily physical, it's still coming from the astral body. We're just experiencing both parts of this two bodies that we have simultaneously. And I think there's a lot of physics that supports this, as well as spiritual teachings. Mm-hmm. And I go into that in the Breakthrough the Limits of the Brain book. I go through it in more detail in the Physics of God. Mm-hmm. But this is a place in which science and spirituality intersect, mm-hmm. that we have this subtle reality. We must have this subtle reality, according to physics, to support the physical expression, or in the broad view of physics, the entire physical universe mm-hmm. is an expression of a subtler universe that exists in what is called the bulk, or what I like to refer to as the energy verse. Mm-hmm. But this comes from not spiritual teachings, but from string theory and from M theory. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, the frontiers of physics are essentially saying there are these two realities, one more subtle than the other, but they're intertwined, interconnected, interdependent. And that is the way our physical and our subtler energy body are as well.
So the implications of this knowledge, of knowing of this multidimensional reality, the implications on our daily decisions. For example, we have to take care of the physical body. We need to breathe correctly. We need, which is the most essential thing, to hydrate ourselves, to have proper food, exercise, rest. But there is this, we call in Spiritism, the spiritual body, the perispirit. However the name is, there is the spirit. Now, knowing of this, and I know you're going to have a chapter about rewiring the brain, and of course it begins in that body to be manifested in the physical. What should people be aware of in terms of nourishing this body, in terms of illnesses, prevention, and also treatment? It changes everything, right?
It does. It does. I think we, along with having wired our brains to operate in the physical realm and operate, effectively and productively, it also makes our focus more on the physical aspects of health. So as you outline them, you've got, breathing well, eating well, exercising well. These are all tangible in the sensory sense of that word.
Mhm.
And therefore, they're the easiest for us to perceive and to measure the benefits of and the response to them. But I would say that those activities account for 15, 20, maybe 25% of the equation of what creates good health.
Mhm.
And that the other 75 or 80% of good health are about our emotions and about our convictions. And the reason that those are more difficult for people to perceive is that you have to tune into them on a more subtle level to be aware of them and to be aware of how they're operating in your life. One confirmation of this balance is that you'll often hear this figure tossed about coming from conventional mainstream medicine, that 85 to 95% of all illness is the result of stress.
Mhm.
So what is stress?
What is stress?
Stress is not about overdoing yourself physically. It's about emotional responses to the life you're living and to your own mental habitual ways of coping with that stress and perceiving the way you live. So that is a powerful figure, but because it's so subjective for most people, it's much easier to think about diet,
Mhm.
exercise, breathing. And I don't want to minimize the importance of those, but I want to also bring in this bigger picture. So how do we work with our emotions
Yes.
to become more healthy? Well, the first thing that I advise everyone to do is to develop a habit of introspection. We tend to analyze, health of the body pretty automatically, but most people don't take much time to really think about what they have been experiencing emotionally in any given day or week or month. And we tend to go on automatic because of that. We start to think, well, this is just life. I'm just experiencing life. But you're experiencing your life through the lens of various emotions that you've tended to tune into over time. And they can be harmonious or they can be negative. And either way, you can kind of get used to them, but you can also become oblivious to them. Take
So
time
you're
to
talking about meditation, right? We're going to the direction of learning to meditate, which you have in your chapter 10.
yes. So
Okay.
meditation definitely helps you experience more harmonious feeling, more harmonious emotions that then wire in your brain, just as any negative emotions you might be habitually experiencing are wired into your brain. When you meditate, you experience higher emotions. And if you meditate regularly, then your brain starts to wire and support your experience of positive emotions and positive thoughts.
So let me ask you a question. Many people, they come to me and say, Vanessa, I want to meditate, but I'm afraid because when I stop and I listen to myself and I start feeling things, I'm afraid. So I have to turn on some audio or video, or 'cause it's hard for people to do this introspective movement, right? It's not.
So Vanessa, I have to apologize. I lost you there for a second.
Sure.
Could you back up about 15 seconds?
Sure. So we're talking about meditating. And you have here in chapter 10, how to meditate and why. And I love this. And I was just saying, many people tell me that they are afraid of meditating sometimes because they are afraid of doing this delve within. They are afraid of listening to what they are thinking and feeling, etc. So how do they overcome it?
That's an interesting question. I also get the feedback from many, many people that they just find meditation difficult. They find it difficult to sit still. It feels like their mind is just running on, and that they don't really experience anything uplifting or any change. So meditation is something that one has to work at. It isn't something that we're all immediately good at doing. So for those who, don't like what they're feeling, I really recommend learning techniques. And I teach one in my book called the Hung Saw technique.
Yeah.
That is an easy way, by following the natural course of your breathing, to focus the mind on just that one simple thing, the breath, and to allow your mind to stop thinking and stop feeling and running these emotions. And even a few moments, let alone a few minutes, of becoming centered in your simple thoughts and nothing else, is like a big release, like a fist unclenching. You can feel a great relaxation spread through your whole being by getting away from your habitual thoughts and feelings. So meditation is a technique. It's a specific means to get beyond the thousands of circuits that are firing in your brain that you've set up over years or decades in your life, one leading to the next, to the next, to the next. Without meditation, we just tend to go on automatic. We get up, we have our habits, both physical and emotional and mental. We go through our day, and we've really done very little except replay the same kind of experiences. So without meditation or deep prayer or some other way of getting out of that habitual firing of circuits, we just go around and around in the same loop. So meditation really was invented by saints and sages to give you a real way of rising above this habitual flow.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get above it, it has a very definite reward. You feel better. You feel more relaxed. In time, you feel more connected to spirit.
Yes.
You feel a deep sense of well-being running through your body. Yeah. And it's those changes, and the more you meditate and the more you make those your habits, that can have the biggest impact on your health.
Yes. It's science. It's proved. And what I love the way you describe, I just want to read an excerpt so people feel how easy read in a way it is, because you really guide the person to the steps, right? To every single point of it. For example, sit in stillness. Finish your practice of Hang Su by deeply inhaling and exhaling, and then forget the breath. Concentrate deeply at the point between the eyebrows. Keep your mind focused and your energy internalized. Absorb yourself in the peace generated by your practice. Continue for at least 5 minutes. It's so easy to follow your guidance.
Oh,
And
thank
talking about guidance, don't you think that for those who go from zero meditation practice to meditating, sometimes hearing somebody guide you, like a guided imagery or visualization, will be a step in between, right?
Yes, I think guided visualizations, guided meditations are very useful for exactly the reason you say. It's easier to begin to let go of your own thoughts if you can just tune into one direction, one flow of thoughts. So I do highly recommend it. I think in time, that can be a starting point rather than the entirety of your meditation, that you can gradually learn, gradually build circuits in your own brain that support remaining in that interiorized calm state and just, drinking it in, enjoying it more and more on your own without an external voice or guide, kind of telling you where to go with your mind and thoughts and feelings. The community of which I am part, Ananda, has a meditation app. If you're interested in the practice of the Hong Sa technique that I mentioned, you can also just download that app onto your phone and it can play for you. There's also other aids to meditation in that same app. But if you're drawn to that, that's a great way to go through a guided meditation. But any meditation is good. A lot of people say, well, what do you think is the best meditation?
Yeah.
And frankly, I have to say, it's the one you want to do.
Yes. The
The
one
one
you,
you want to do is the best meditation because it will take you in and get you going.
yes.
And people say, well, how long should I meditate? And I say, well, meditate as long as you want to meditate.
Yeah.
There is no magic to exactly how long it should be or exactly what meditation technique you should use. The more, the better. And unlike physical exercise where you can overdo it,
Yeah.
you really can't meditate too much.
No.
And you will find after a while that it's easy to stay in meditation. Once you get over the hump, if you will, of being distracted and instead start to experience this wonderful sense of inner peace and well-being, you'll find it easy to just drink that in and stay in that state for more extended periods of time.
Interesting. In our spiritist studies, we read many books that were psychographed about Jesus. And recently I was watching this series, The Chosen, about the Christ. And often he says he has to retreat. He doesn't say meditation, I'm going to pray, or I need a break, he says. It's so interesting because, as you said, it's there since ancient times. Now we have a name. And recently, we all got to know that Harvard opened a new space. I know neuroscientists have been studying meditation and the power. It's already proved, as you said, but it's opening more space for its applications in the health field as well, which is phenomenal. And again, talking about the brain, as you said, and in this third part of your book that talks about rewiring the brain, of course, we count on plasticity, the neuroplasticity. You have a whole chapter about relaxation, and it talks about the power of affirmations. Can you explore with the audience a little more about this, the power of affirmations to rewire your brain, please?
Well, the same principle is at work to rewire your brain as was in place when you wired your brain, which is that anything you do repeatedly and the more attention you apply to it, the quicker the result. But anything that you do over and over again, and that's not just physical, but emotional and mental, your brain will start to create circuits that support that. So circuit sounds kind of perhaps vague, but if you meditate regularly, it will begin to fire neural circuits that fire other neural circuits. And one of those other neural circuits can be what's called the relaxation response, where it moves you out of the stress-inducing mode of operating and puts you into the relaxation mode. You're going from fight and flight to rest and relax. And that is a physiological switch within the body. So fight or flight is not just how you feel emotionally. Your body is also kind of gearing up for fight or flight. So your muscles are tenser, your breathing is more rapid, you've got more adrenaline washing through your system. That's because your body is obligingly ready to fight or flee, because your signals you're sending it emotionally are that you're in danger. You're going to need to do something here. So, okay, I'll do that for you, says the body, so to speak. But if you stay in that emotion that's causing the fight or flight perpetually, your body stays in that hypertense, basically health destructive mode indefinitely. So meditation can literally flip a switch in your brain that puts you into a different mode, the rest and relax. And the rest and relax mode, interestingly enough, uses a whole different set of nerves within your body. And it causes just the opposite. It causes the big muscles in your body to relax. It causes your digestion to kick in. It's really the polar opposite of fight and flight. So that's what I mean by circuits being created that help you. So the first time you meditate, you're probably going to have to do more work, more focused concentration to get yourself into that rest and relax mode. But if you meditate regularly, there's a circuit that begins to support that and will kick you into rest and relax more quickly, more automatically. So that rewiring process is really about either creating circuits that will help you do that, or strengthening circuits that already do that, those positive things. And you have to be deliberate because the circuits we've developed that we now may perceive and experience in our life as being negative have a life of their own. We have, literal physical structures in our brain that support those negative experiences. So to rewire your brain, you have to be conscious and deliberate. You have to say, I'm going to develop a new circuit that is the opposite of the one I no longer want to be subject to.
So you need to know yourself, dedicate time to know yourself. It's like calling an architect or an interior designer to your house, saying, I want to change it. And you're like, how do you want me to change it, right?
Yeah, no, that's a good analogy. And if you don't know or appreciate or have a feel for the triggers that make you go into negative emotions or negative trains of thought, it's very difficult to know what antidote you want to create. So if you have a tendency to get angry or tensed up by the end of your day, you don't like it, but you may not know well enough what the triggers along the way were in your day that made you end up with that. So take time to introspect, ask yourself, well, why was I so tense at the end of my day? What were the episodes? And maybe it was traffic to begin with. Well, why does traffic make you tense? Well, because I'm afraid I'm going to be late. Well, why does being afraid you're going to be late make you tense? Just follow the feeling. Don't judge it. Don't tell yourself, well, that's stupid. I shouldn't feel that way. Just be self-honestly genuine about what did I experience emotionally.
And don't blame anybody else either, right? Because some people, they find those out, oh, maybe because my dad used to be this way, my mom used to be that way. So we just cut that part and go straight to facts.
Right.
And from facts to a decision to change. And that's the beauty of it all. Many people don't know they can change it. And then how to change it. And then you give affirmations, as you say here. Affirmations are a powerful support to any effort you make to rewire your brain. Now, for those who are watching us, like, okay, but there are many YouTube videos with people saying affirmations, from Louise Hay to Wayne Dyer to Bernie Siegel, many others, and you give examples here too. I want to give one or two examples to the people who are listening to us and watching us. And I love this. I remain ever safe within the impregnable walls of my inner peace. And now the next one. I live in the fortress of God's inner presence. Nothing and no one can break through these walls. I love when you, in your book, you tie neuroscience with spirituality so well that God is so present, making us feel like we're safe, we're in the fortress. I think, nowadays we see so many people going to the extremes, like it's either God or science, and then you bridge it up, just like Kardec did in 1857 when he published the Spirit's book as a scientist. First question, what is God? Because God is not a who. So the supreme intelligence of the universe, the first cause of all things. And from then on, 1,018 more questions and answers to lead us into this universal awareness that we have been hearing from so many religions and philosophies, and now in the modern times made sense to all of us. And in your book, you make it very practical. Because you've been a teacher, right?
I've been a teacher, and I think perhaps even more important than that is that I've been a meditator for 50 years.
Oh my.
And a lot of people will say, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
But they perhaps relate to it like, you jogged every morning. But the key to meditation is not just that it is some form of exercise. It's learning to connect to spirit. And when you learn to connect to spirit in the stillness and quiet that you can attain in meditation, then you're filled with much more than you can ever create yourself or affirm into existence yourself or exercise into existence. It's not about the ego creating something. It's about the ego opening to something that's already there. And that something that is already there, as you say, has been described by different people over millennia in different ways. But the universality of it is God or spirit or infinity or superconsciousness. And all of those words, might have different connotations for different people, but the experience that you have in meditation allows you to go, now I get it. I understand what you mean by there being spirit. So when I write and when I teach, I think people sense that I have no doubts about the presence of God. I have no doubts about the presence of spirit because I have for so many decades now been able to experience it. I don't want to say that I have the experience moment by moment all the time, but I'm confident enough from the many experiences I have had that if I can get myself into the right space, that is that still, quiet, receptive space, that God will be there, just no question. And it will fill me in various ways. Might be inspiration, might just be simple release, relaxation, peace, might be a sense of love, might be an intuitive sense of an answer to some question I have, or the direction for where to take a book or a project I'm working on. But it's always there. And I have come to experience it so often that I have no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where anyone can end up. And
Yes.
the more you have that, the more you can relax and feel safe. Because you know you are safe in the fortress of God.
That's beautiful. Two more things. When you say, if you're thinking that you just don't have the open-hearted determination needed for directly achieving superconscious awareness, know that open-hearted determination can be developed, and that your brain will rewire to support your doing. So you're talking about inspiring yourself, and you give some directions here, like reading books, spending time with people who are like-minded, who are inspiring as well, listening to music that uplifts, singing to celebrate the divine, saturate your mind and heart with superconscious reminders. So from here to the moments or the people who start experiencing neurodegenerative disorders, do you have anything to tell them?
Nothing is incurable. That would be the first thing I'd say. But if you have a serious illness, it's going to take serious rewiring to affect that healing. I think it's worth every part of the process of rewiring to eventually heal yourself. But every part of the process along the way is in itself healing, even if you don't experience a complete physical change. The more mainstream medicine, society tells you that what you have is incurable, the more careful you have to be about what you take in and what you affirm. Because the saints, many of whom healed others, were themselves constantly healing themselves. And they did it because they could do it, I should say. They had no doubts. They could feel God's power and God's energy coursing through their being, and knew without doubt that health was a matter of staying in that and not letting their minds be hypnotized with the thought that there is such a thing as an incurable disease. So it is a big challenge. It is a life journey. I don't want to minimize at all how big of a mountain it would be to climb. If you are being told you have an incurable disease, you have to really knuckle down and change the way you see yourself, change the way you view illness, and create a potent relationship with God or spirit along the way. But you can do it. There are amazing stories. I'm writing another book now. I'm in the middle of it, but it's not done yet, which is called The Science of Miraculous Healing.
Oh, wow.
And it's all about self-healing, that we have unlimited powers to self-heal, but we have to know them. We have to make them our own. We won't be healed from outside ourselves. The stark truth of healing is really that we caused our illness.
Yes.
And that's a hard thing for us to accept, that we did this to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't do it knowingly. We didn't do it with, self-malice or anything. We just didn't know better. And we developed habits of particularly negative emotions and deep mental convictions about ourselves that kept in motion a kind of continuous damage to our nervous system and to our cells that make up the body. And so the first thing that we need to accept to have a profound healing like this is that we have to stop certain directions that we've been going in, emotional and mental directions, and replace them with positive ones. And that it's a total life commitment. If you read the stories from people who have overcome cancer, in almost all cases, they will talk about how they had to come to self-knowledge to begin with.
Yes, I agree.
They had to know their own hearts. They had to know their own minds. And then they could rebuild with positive emotions and positive thoughts.
Yes.
And diet and exercise and all those things come along with it.
Yes.
But the core of it is this emotional and mental journey that you have to take.
Wow. It's beautiful. And as you say, use affirmations to develop the conviction that you are superconscious. I love this. I am a child of eternity. I'm ageless. And I emphasize this affirmation because when I turned 50 last year, for me, I always loved my birthdays, but it's like, oh, wow, it means something. Does it? What has changed now? Of course, these are changes year after year, but then you start thinking, I am ageless. I am not the physical body. I'm connected to the physical body. So telling people, it's hard to tell the market. It's hard to tell people when they see appearance only, but the importance, as you say, I feel it. I'm deathless. It works on this daily fear of attachments that we have to let go. How often, Joseph, I walk with my dog, and the spirit mentor, Joseph, which is our spirit mentor, he says, every day when you walk the dog, when you close the door, think you may never come back. Does that change your life, Vanessa?
Mm-hmm.
Because one day you won't be back.
Right.
And then what? What does that mean?
Right.
Right?
And that, as you had said earlier about meditation, that thought can be profoundly healing, but it's also scary to people because it makes them think, well, I have this life that I like. I have these people that I love. I have things I don't want to just let go of. And so even positively, they tend to want to hang on to things as they are. And there's this underlying fear that if I get too deep into spirit or too deep into meditation or too deep into that awareness, that I'll become indifferent to my own life. And I want to really emphasize and reassure people that you never become indifferent to your own life.
Mm-hmm.
Being in that centered non-attachment doesn't mean you no longer care. It simply allows you to behave from a deeper, better center. that you remain involved in your life. You remain in loving relationship with whomever you are, and perhaps more people come along with whom you can connect in a positive way. You don't lose any of that, but your experience of it becomes deeper and more loving, while perhaps counterintuitively you become more detached, and less thrown by the ups and downs of life. You get both. You get the best of both worlds. You get the inner freedom of being in spirit, and you get the ability to live your life better simultaneously.
Wow. I love it all, and I would recommend time and again to all the listeners here, and I'll put the title again of the book we're talking about, Break Through the Limits of the Brain. You talk about joy and bliss, and we need so much. I know people are still recovering from 3 hard years of challenges with COVID and much more. And we are in this aftermath. We see everybody recovering in the healthcare, in families, at work, the whole economical status, the economics nowadays, everything is still readjusting, finding, and people are still asking, right, Joseph, like, what do I want to do? Because they learned that everything may end. So then where do I focus? People are reinventing themselves, readapting. What would you like to say as a final comment for those who are watching us and are in this very moment thinking about this, like, I'm back to life. I can do it all. Where do I go?
Well, I think one of the things that I heard from many people going through the pandemic was it did result in them feeling more self-reliant, that it was clearer to them that happiness was going to be something they determined, that life as they had known it was abruptly changed, but that didn't mean they had to be unhappy. Now, many people were unhappy. They didn't necessarily gain that insight. But for all of those who did gain that insight, I would just say, don't lose it. Build on it. It's a precious insight, knowing that happiness is, as they say, an inside job, that it doesn't get delivered to you by what you create around you. It gets delivered to you by what you tune into within yourself, and that is the key to happiness. And that meditation apps, the practice of meditation exploded during those years because it was perfect. Oh, I can do this at home.
Yeah.
I can take charge of my own spiritual life. I don't have to go to a church. I don't have to do any particular activities. I can find it within. And I think that's a powerful lesson to just keep going with for the rest of your life.
I agree. I want to thank you so much, Joseph, for being here with us. Thank you. Thank you for the books you have written, for sharing this wisdom and bringing to us a better world. We hope to see you another time here at Kardec Radio, because we had a blast.
Be my pleasure to come back, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. So for those who are watching us again, just go to the website, josephselbie.com, SELBIE.com. And the books are available on Kindle. If you want to buy the paperback, go to Amazon, to your local bookstores. But remember, as he said, you are more than you know. That's the first chapter, the title. There is so much in synchronicity with everything we have been studying here at Kardec Radio. Spiritism, the Spiritist science. You see, it's the universal teachings. So, we hope you have enjoyed it and that we agree. Blessed America, you see, right here in this very lands, blessed by these thinkers that are opening our minds and our hearts to a true, fulfilled life. We thank you for being with us. If you have any questions, you can write to us right here in the comments or at kardecradio@gmail.com. We'll be happy to reply to your question or comment, and also to relay questions to the very author, Joseph Selbie, who was here with us. Thank you, friends. We wish you many blessings.
We hope you have enjoyed our program. Spread the word, Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.